I'm Scott Kegler. I'm here at UConnect 2010, and I'm here with Bob Celeste. And we're going to talk about 2015, right?
Right.
A short 5 years from now, and how serialization and codes and healthcare mandates and all those kind of things, right?
Right.
So just why don't you start us off, because I think I just said everything I know about it.
Okay, great. So just to give you the background around it, in 2015, the California regulation is that 50% of all pharmaceuticals being sold in the state have to be uniquely identified. So each bottle at the lowest saleable level to a pharmacy, and be supplied with a pedigree information, electronic pedigree information. So those are the kind of nuances that are different between what's going on in California and what's already happening in Florida and at the federal level. So as I say, what goes with California goes with the country.
Right.
And so manufacturers that have been serializing product are obviously not just serializing for one state. And so throughout the whole country, we'll start seeing serialized product more and more. So there's a lot of nuances with that, though. The supply chain is far from simple.
Right.
There's a lot of players in the supply chain, a lot of different business practices that have to be accounted for. And so through the 2015 readiness program, what we're trying to do is capture those nuances, go beyond just the simple understanding of the supply chain, and really simulate, and using simulation software and techniques that you use in industry to do studies of processes and things like that.
Right.
And we're using that to simulate product as it moves through a supply chain, and also the information that needs to be captured as those products move.
Right.
And the reason for that is that the industry has come together and they said, if we didn't have a regulation, could we also use this information for different purposes? So for beneficial purposes of not only securing the supply chain, but providing real business value.
Okay.
And
so beyond recall and the pedigree stuff,
And so early last year, actually, 2009, about 65 different folks from the supply chain, represented from manufacturers, wholesalers, and retail and hospital pharmacy, came together and just had a sort of a brainstorm around what other business practices or processes could gain value from that kind of data. And I've said this number before, but it's not a magic number, but they did come up with about 130 different business processes that could gain value.
Oh, that could leverage the data that you're going to be setting up.
Yeah. So the same data that you need to track an item through the supply chain can be used for other things.
Okay.
And to give you an example of the other things, it could be shipment deliveries. It could be to help with pharmacy theft, cargo theft, even to things things within the hospital. So the hospitals have said, we understand we're only responsible for pedigree at the pharmacy door, but we'd like to track this down to the bedside.
Sure.
So we could look at things like
medical record updates and that kind of thing.
Introducing medical records, even things like patient flow, operating room turns, things like that are within the grasp of that kind of information. So this is going to take a lot of work. It's not a switch that you just turn on.
Right.
But there's a lot of folks that have good visibility, thoughts ahead in the future of what they can do with the data.
So this is a data structure issue, a software design issue, a rules engine kind of it's a whole bunch of little spots.
Yeah, it actually, one of the things that I talk to people about is that by going through this process of simulating it, you start to see the connection between business policy and operations flow. And as an example, for pedigree, you need to say who you are as you're moving things through the supply chain. So you have some choices there. You could either say, I'm going to identify myself as an entire company, or as this particular facility, or even you could go down with our standards down to the loading dock that ship the actual product.
Okay.
So that's a policy issue. How much do I want to expose my internal architecture and facilities? But making those decisions for pedigree could impact your ability to gain benefit for other processes. So as an example, there are companies that will say, let's say you make a product, but you source it from 3 different countries,
Okay.
the raw materials. Companies, your trading partners may say, I like your product, I'll purchase your product, but I only want the product that's sourced out of a certain area.
Okay.
So now that's a different level of granularity below the company level.
So I need to be tracking that in
Right.
order to even do business with these folks.
Yeah.
Right.
And so now you're gaining a really significant business benefit out of the same data that you had to do anyhow for pedigree.
Okay. Interesting. So we have 2015 and we have 2016, which is the 100% year.
Right.
What do you think is the reality of this?
Boy, it's projecting the future is always dangerous because you always end up on somebody's slide
Okay.
with your name on it. But
But you have a good sense for the challenges at this point.
Yeah, and there are a lot of challenges. This is a supply chain where mistakes are not tolerated.
Right.
Six Sigma processes. There's a lot to do. Manufacturers have the issue of around all their production lines have been built without serialization into consideration. So some of these production lines literally don't have enough space on them to put the equipment.
Right.
So they're wrestling with that kind of business. The other end of the supply chain, well, if we look at some of the large wholesalers and how fast material moves through their processes, this has to work very, very quickly.
Hit the loading dock on this side and go across the hall and out the other side. Yeah.
Nothing sits for very long.
Right.
And then
By design.
Yeah, by design. And you think about the pharmacies, especially independent pharmacies, who may not have a lot of architecture to rely on.
Sure.
But again, some of the wholesalers are looking at this as opportunities to provide those kind of services.
Kind of thing.
Interesting things ahead.
Yeah, great. Wow. Yeah, it really does sound exciting.
It is.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Bob. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And maybe I'll see you next year.
Okay, great. Thanks.